around, Lara Croft is portrayed by Alicia Vikander, no longer Angelina Jolie of the original first two films, and she's the heir to the Croft family. Her father has been missing for quite some time, and she's very independent. She doesn't feel the need to take any of this money, but once she uncovers some truths about her father and a possible location where he may have gone missing, she sets out on her very first adventure to find him. This film is very much so based on the 2013 reboot game, and it follows it very closely. And many visual elements from that game carry over to this film, including tiptoeing across a plane that's stuck in a waterfall, or tiptoeing across a tree that's fallen over a cliff, surviving a lot of falls. Even certain wounds that she gets are straight out of the game. When she comes face to face with danger and a life-threatening situation in which she has to make a terrible choice, it plays out similarly to the way the game did. And in that way, this is one of the most visually faithful video game adaptations ever made. As far as the puzzles she solves, the way she obtains her weaponry, whether she's using a bow and arrow or something else, it's exactly like in the reboot game. And so if you were a fan of that game, which I was, you're going to be happy as you see it faithfully translated to the screen. This film was directed by a Norwegian filmmaker named Roar Uthog, and I may have said his name completely incorrectly. And with him, he's brought a good sense of momentum. He understands the important stepping stones that have to be present to set up Lara Croft as the Tomb Raider we know her to be, and all of the things that have to happen for that development to make sense. Her first adventure, her first kill, her first wound that she has to dress. All of these things are set up fairly well. And that's my biggest takeaway as a positive from this movie, is the character of Lara Croft has never been portrayed in a film more realistically and better. To be honest, I'm a big fan of Angelina Jolie's movies, but not in the sense that they are great films. If you've seen my review of Tomb Raider, you know that it's one of my biggest guilty pleasures of all time. I could watch that movie with friends and family over and over again, and it never gets old. It's so silly and absolutely hilarious. I enjoy that film quite a bit. But Alicia Vikander is really damn good in this movie. She honors this character so well. And whether or not fans end up liking this movie or not, I think the majority will walk away happy with the portrayal of Croft on the big screen. As someone who is a fan of the games, who has played most of them, I was happy with this adaptation. I think that it has a few issues storytelling-wise, and it has some physics problems that really all of the Tomb Raider games have if you want to take them seriously. Lara Croft survives so much. I mean, she's thrown through trees, she falls down waterfalls. I mean, she really should be dead and split into a million pieces. But it's one of those things where you either roll with it or you don't. There's physics on display in this movie that don't always make sense. Characters survive things that don't always make sense. But as a video game adaptation, it's sort of something you expect to happen. Even in superhero films, people walk away from things and you're like, no, I'm sorry, you're a human. You're not a superhero and you should be dead. And that happens a lot in this movie. And there's quite a bit of exposition as well. A lot of storytelling. A lot of people are telling stories about things that happened in the past with ancient evils. And there's a revelation towards the third act that got kind of silly. When you uncover what this ancient evil is really about, it does seem pretty far-fetched, but I must reiterate, this is a Tomb Raider film. All of the Tomb Raider games have an edge of unbelievability to them in every sense. The 90s games were considerably more sexualized than the reboot was. Lara Croft was more of an object in those games. And Angelina Jolie's films followed more in the footsteps of the 90s Tomb Raider, with more tongue-in-cheek elements and a lot more sexiness. In fact, I've always said that the first Tomb Raider movie is the last 90s movie ever made, because that was one of the very last big studio action movies that came out before 9/11 that was incredibly silly and over the top. And after 9/11 happened, action movies got a lot more serious and more realistic. So in the case of this film, following off the footsteps of the more grounded reboot Tomb Raider that we have today, I think they did a pretty good job accomplishing and putting that vibe and that world on the big screen. I think Tomb Raider fans will mostly be happy. I know I am. It's